I don't think that equality of opportunity is a problem. I think that's a great thing, and that anyone with any sense champions equality of opportunity. I mean, even if you're purely selfish, say, and purely self-centered, you'd want to set up an economy where everyone who had ability could be maximally exploited by everyone else, because then we can all benefit from each other's talents. And so equality of opportunity is an absolutely useful fundamental principle.
So where's
but
the
that has
problem?
nothing to do with equality of outcome. Those things aren't even in the same conceptual universe. And to strive for equality of outcome is, well, it's a fool's game and likely to be extraordinarily, it has proved to be in the past, extraordinarily dangerous as well as impossible. So, I mean, one of the things we know, for example, is that, I don't know to what degree it's common knowledge in Scandinavia, but the biggest differences between men and women in the world in terms of temperament and interest are in Scandinavia, and they've maximized as a consequence of your egalitarian policies.
What do you mean by that?
It means that the more egalitarian your state, the bigger the personality differences between men and women. That's like
How do you measure that? How do you know that?
Oh, well, psychologists have perfected, at least to some degree, the measure of personality over the last 30 years with very advanced statistical models. And so what you do is you offer men and women well-validated tests of preference and of personality. And you do that all across the world with tens of thousands of people in multi-country samples. And then you look at the difference between men and women. And then you rank order that by wealth and egalitarian social policy. And what you find is the more egalitarian the society, the more different the men and women become.
Is this something you can recognize, or is it?
I would say, for me, it's quite a simple question, actually. Do we want that our sons and daughters should have the same opportunities and the same dreams or hopes for the good thing, or no? And for me, it's simple to answer that. It's yes, of course. So for me, equality and gender equality is very, very important. For me, also when we talk about gender equality, it's important for me to learn my daughter that her mom can lead and show the way, and her dad can hug and kiss her and show feelings. And I think that's something very important for the hoods where kids grow up, to show feelings, to have these gender equality discussions, to show her a way of opportunities and to strive forward. And it's important both for lonely men, lonely young men, but also for women that feel this roof of glass. They need to fight and to struggle the roof of glass to be successful in their lives.
I'm not hearing what you think. I'm hearing how you're able to represent the ideology you were taught. And it's not that interesting because I don't know anything about you. I could replace you with someone else who thinks the same way. And that means you're not here. That's what it means. It's not pleasant. So you're not integrating the specifics of your personal experience with what you've been taught to synthesize something that's genuine and surprising and engaging in a narrative sense as a consequence. And that's the pathology of ideological possession. It's not good.
All right, what's up? Welcome to the Caige Man. I'm Caige. What we've just seen is a far too common example of a modern debate between classical liberalism and the progressive left. These debates pit fact and logic versus feelings and ideology. So I want to talk a bit more about pathology of ideological possession. Increasingly, the tactics of the left have become anti-knowledge and anti-truth, while simultaneously championing the moral high ground. Reality is reduced to a mere inconvenience and lost in the discourse. We only have to look at the discussion to see the stark contrast between what is stated by Jordan Peterson and the reply by the Swedish politician Annie Lööf. It seems like what Peterson is saying goes right over her head, like his words never even connect to what is going on in her mind. Her answer is unsurprising. She completely misses the point of his argument and instead gives us a regurgitated set of progressive talking points that we've heard so many times before. I would say communication breaks down at this point, but the argument could be made that communication never even took place to begin with. By choosing not to respond to the points made by Jordan Peterson, Louf abdicated her intellectual responsibility to engage in the exchange of ideas. She failed to integrate Jordan Peterson's points into her own rebuttal of his statement on any level. And I cannot accept the notion that she somehow lacks the intelligence to comprehend the fairly straightforward points made by Dr. Jordan Peterson. So I am left with assuming that this is a strategy. Because not only does Louf not engage Jordan Peterson, she proceeds to list a set of values that aren't being contested by anyone, and so creates the illusion that her opponent is against these near universally accepted ideas, like mothers being able to lead and fathers being able to hug their daughters, etc. As if Jordan Peterson ever said that they couldn't or shouldn't. But it's a very profitable tactic if your only aim is to shut down your opponent rather than interact with them or to debate them. After all, it's unbelievably easy to see your opponent as evil, as they are, if they are against fundamental values such as those. Yeah, who would ever listen to someone who is evil, right? Or a madman? This is a form of intellectual dishonesty. It's like saying that you are a communist because you believe everyone should be able to have food and shelter. But since everyone, including the quote-unquote evil capitalists, believe that it is wrong to have people die of starvation or of exposure, you're not creating a fair distinction between your point and those of your opponents. And so you are conveniently awarding yourself a moral high ground, which is undeserved and dishonest. I picked this clip because the tactic that Louf uses is not an uncommon one. It's not just an exception, but an increasingly more normalized form of intellectual debates, and perhaps even the standard that we see on television all around the Western world. Whole generations of students are coming from the universities who aren't taught to think critically or rationally, but to repeat the talking points of their often very liberal professors. And they do so without questioning them, even when the points made are obvious contradictions or fly in the face of common sense. They will just repeat those points, despite that I know that they are intelligent enough, and you also know when you talk to them that they are intelligent enough to see that the logic is flawed, but they just keep repeating the points over and over, and it is as if you are talking to someone who actually isn't really there. That person is not engaged with you. The person is a mouthpiece for an agenda. So why is forming your own political opinion so difficult? Why, when I walk around on campus or when I listen to the news, do I not hear these surprising and engaging ideas? To be your own critic is harsh enough, I can tell you, but to form your own opinion and be whipped for it by your social surroundings, that is brutal. So I fully understand that part. That is why it is paramount to have a culture that is principally organized around creating an environment for the free exchange of ideas without ostracizing those that diverge from the mainstream. But this is no longer the situation on the left. Challenging the orthodoxy is swiftly met with punishment in the form of social exclusion, character assassination, threats to one's occupation, censorship, and even violence has become more and more normalized with the rise of Antifa. Because if it's okay to hit the fascists, and if everyone that disagrees with you is a fascist, well, we all know where that leads. The slanders of the progressive era have become so common that almost everyone can name them. Racist, homophobe, alt-right, transphobe, misogynist, bigot, Nazi, coon, white supremacist, toxic masculinity, Islamophobe, the list goes on. These accusations are used regardless of the race, sexuality, background, or religion of the person that is being accused. For example, Dave Rubin has been called a homophobe despite being openly gay. Ben Shapiro, a Nazi, despite being a Jew. Milo Yiannopoulos, a racist, despite being married to a black man. And Jordan Peterson for promoting toxic masculinity while being a man who's not ashamed to cry in public and says that competence is the basis for authority and not power. That doesn't sound very toxically masculine to me. But none of this seems to matter. Disagreeing with the mainstream is akin to declaring yourself an outlaw these days. Free to be attacked, marginalized, ridiculed, and eventually publicly destroyed by any means necessary. We are all very aware of this ever-worsening development, yet the real question remains, why can't we communicate anymore? The progressive mainstream holds almost half of the Western world in its ideological narrative. Despite the obvious flaws in their reasoning, the actual lack of accomplishments of the movement, and the increasing culture of mob rule and rule by fear, there don't seem to be many people willing to turn their backs against the leftist progressive intellectuals. It is my belief that this breakdown in communication lies with these leftist intellectuals simply because they refuse to engage in an honest debate, simply because they throw away logic, throw away rationality and reason, and their only objective seems to be power and discrediting their opponents. How we can bring the left back to the center is a mystery to me. If reason and logic are no longer convincing, then what is? How do you engage with the leadership on the left if they refuse to debate you fairly and honestly? Which is, in my opinion, the fundamental basis for a free and open Western society. In a future video, I hope to elaborate even further on that. For now, my name is Caige, the Caige Man. Thanks for watching.